Hi everyone. Today our discussion topic is network security 2, and the major problems are centered on DNS, which is domain name system, and DNS SEC. So first I will introduce DNS to you in a really brief introduction. So this is a picture of how DNS is working. It's basically a hierarchical query for the IP address of the domain name that the users want to browse. So this is example of asking the domain name of ecs.mit.edu. And the first thing we have here, this is our local server, and we as a user send our request to our local server to ask for the IP address, and our local server first turn to the root DNS server, which is only a dot. And then because here is a dot, so all the root servers, so the dot is the only root server that will turn to, like, for every domain name. And after that, the root server will tell us where is the .edu server, because the .edu server is the direct descendant of the root server. And the .edu server will tell us where is the .mit.edu server, because mit.edu server is the direct descendant of the .edu server. And mit.edu server will tell us that he knows what is the IP address of ecs.mit.edu, and thus, sorry, I didn't see this one. So this is this is our user, and so this mit.edu server will return back the IP address of ecs.mit.edu, and this thing, the 7, is equal to 8 thing. And there is also a structure in this DNS system that is caching. So if any of the DNS servers had been requested with the same domain name in the TTL time, which is time to leave, they will save the IP address with the name servers that is responsible for the IP address in their cache. And thus we won't get into this whole process, and we will directly get the answer. However, when the time to leave expired, the DNS servers have to loop through this this process again. And here is the basic structure of the DNS response. So I want to help your attention to a few things that are really important for you to understand the DNS response. And first is there is an identification part. In here it says 19901, and this is actually a 16-bit number. And this is a really important information, because this is the only part that help us to make sure that this is the response for our request instead of a response for others' request. So we have to check the 16-bit identification number before we receive or use the answer. And the next part that is really important is so I will introduce you to the structure of this response. The first one is the question section, and second one is the answer section. The third one is the authority section, and fourth one is the additional section. The question section is by its name, all we ask, and here is the ecs.mit.edu. So here we'll see that we get A, and A means there's answer, the DNS server found the answer to the IP address, to the domain. And here, and in this answer section, we found this IP address that is the IP address of the domain name that we queried. And in the authority sections, there are 3 name servers. How can I know it's a name server? Because of this type name, it's called NS, which is the name server. And so MIT.edu, MIT.edu, and MIT.edu are 3 servers of the MIT.edu, and they have different names as listed by here, which is Beastie, W20NS, Stora, WB. And so why we have this authority session, because this is the name servers that should be responsible for the answer section for the IP address we get. And here's the additional section. So what is the additional section? We can see that we have the 3 servers listed out here, and this is the IP address of the servers. So if we want to check if the servers are correct or authenticate, then we just go through here, and we don't need to we can directly go here to check that those servers are authenticating correct. And also there's another flag to notice, which is here. So this is marked as the status, and there's 2 kind of flags. One is non-error, and the second one is not existent domain. So the first flag signals success, and the second flag signals failure to find the DNS IP address. And the last thing I want to stress about DNS is that it uses UDP to process and communicate information, because UDP is fast, light, and although it's not reliable, but this is not a drawback for DNS, because the info sent by the DNS is all public. So the IP address which is sent by the DNS is made all public to public, so there's no worry to keep a secret. And if this graph is a little bit complicated and mess out, then this one is a better one for you to get the structure of the of the DNS request. We can see that we have an identification number here, and here is the source number, here's destination number, and checksum, which is to check the which is not really important in this part. And we have questions, authorities, answer, additional answer, which is this 4 parts. And the last thing, sorry, I thought that was the last thing, but yeah, the last thing I want to mention is that for some security reasons, the source port might be randomized to increase the difficulty for the off-path attackers to guess our identification number and our source number, and thus to race with the DNS servers and to send us the wrong responses. So this is all about the DNS server, and I will move on to the question part. In this first question, it is asking that what your computer sends a DNS request for www.google.com, and assume the DNS resolver receives back the following reply. Describe what this reply means and where the DNS solver should look next. So what we can see here is that we get back from the .com server, and we get an address for a.gtld servers.net, and from it we get an answer, which is 192.5.6.30. So what does this mean? So this means that the IP address for google.com is not clear. However, we know that there's a name server, which is a.gtld servers.net. That is the next step for us to check where to check the IP address of Google. And so this question becomes clear that this IP address 192.5.6.30 is where the DNS server would look next. So the graph here is a little bit wrong. After we check .com, we'll check a.gtld servers.net, and hopefully we'll get to Google.com soon. Okay, so let's move to the next part. If an off-pass adversary wants to poison the DNS cache, what values does the adversary need to guess? So this is clear from what I have introduced you through the brief introduction of DNS, and it's the identification number. In the case that the source ports are also randomized for additional security, we might also need to guess the source port. But normally they are set to 53, but they might also be randomized. So the next question is, why not use cryptography to make the DNS connection secure? And this is all, I have also explained this in the previous part of the introduction to DNS. The first reason is that the DNS need to be fast and light. And second is all information are public, which means the IP address are public. And the third reason is that the problem with the challenge or the potential risk of DNS is that we can't make sure which name server to trust, and this is certainly not solved by cryptography. Okay, so this is the answer for this question 1. And if you have any other questions, you can ask on Piazza. And now I will move to the question 2. So this part is about DNS and a little bit about DNSSEC. And the first question is totally about DNS, and I will, instead of like introducing DNSSEC, I will just push you through the first part of the question 2. So Alice wants to access Berkeley's diversity advancement project there. There.berkeley.edu. Her laptop connects to a wireless access point. Alice worries that a hacker attacks the DNS protocol when her laptop is looking for IP address. Assume the DNS is not in use. Question: which of the following can attack the DNS protocol and have Alice browser obtain incorrect IP address for there? So my answer is that all 8 choices can achieve this job. And the reason is that they are actually all on-pass attackers. So they all know the identification number and the source port. And there's no way that they can't race with the real name servers. So all of them can do the same job, can achieve this job. And the second part is about DNS SEC. And I will give you a brief introduction to DNS SEC. I won't get to too much detail for this part because it's a really complicated one, and this question is only touching on a really shallow part. And so one sentence to summarize DNSSEC is that we want object security instead of channel security. Here is like a comparison of the ordinary DNS and the DNSSEC. And we can see that in the ordinary DNS, we are just asking the server, asking one of the name server and asking the name server that this name server introduce us to, and asking the next name server that second next name server introduce us to. So we are asking these name servers from a simple answer of the DNS servers. And this is really dangerous because anyone could pretend to be the name server and give us a wrong answer. And we'll just follow their instructions instead of like recognizing any difference and without any ways to protect ourselves. So how can we secure us from the situation? The DNSSEC is one of the most efficient way to do this. So what we have is we have a hard-coded root server public key. On our laptop. Although this is not the case for so after we have this public key, root server's public key, the root servers can do some digital signing, digital signature. To ensure that the things that are sent by them can only sent by them. They can prove their identity. So here is one of the examples. So we are asking the root server what is the IP address for google.com, and the root server is telling us to look from this name server a.gtld servers.net, and to prove it's secure, to prove the root server's identity, the root servers gave us this root key, and it also gave us this .com server's next public key. So when we are asking the .com server, we now have its public key. So when the .com server gives us back this result, we can check that this .com key is the public key that we received. And this .com server gave us the name server address for google.com, and it also gave us the google.com's public key. So when we are asking google.com, we actually have public key of google.com. And now we can check whether this is the same with the one that google.com sent us, because private keys are only known by this name servers, and we can verify them with their public keys. So this is basically the structure of DNSSEC, which is a little bit different from DNS. So we can make sure that every DNS response we get, like a card like this, are all validate from the point that they are sent by the people we know, we can trust. And now let's move to the second part. Now assume that berkeley.edu implements DNSSEC and Alice recursive resolver, but not her client validates DNSSEC. We know for sure that after the root server send us this hierarchical keychain, there's no way for anyone after the root server, or actually after our local DNS resolver, to fake the IP address and fake the DNS response. But anything before the local resolver still can do it. So we can only delete this choice, which is an on-pass attacker between the local DNS resolver and the rest of the internet. Okay, so let's now move to the next part. So this part is about an attacker wants to poison the local DNS resolver's cache using Kaminsky's attack. We assume that the resolver does not use source port randomization, so the attacker will likely succeed resolver for an existing subdomain of berkeley.edu of UC Berkeley, like stanford.berkeley.edu, instead of asking for an existing domain like their.berkeley.edu. So the question is, what is the advantage of asking for a non-existent domain compared to asking for an existing domain? So I want to introduce Kaminsky's blind spoofing to you a little bit. Kaminsky's blind spoofing attack is an efficient attack facing random ID for even an off-pass attacker. The first characteristic of the Kaminsky blind spoofing attack is that the attacker will force the user to click on like thousands of random domain lookups, which is embedded maybe one after one and one after one. So the victim might only click on one link, but the link is bringing them to a series of link that is opening, which is done by CSS or JavaScript, and so there's a higher like chance of guessing for the correct ID, the second characteristic of this attack is that the attacker need to raise with the legit reply. And the reason that we are asking for non-existent subdomains instead of existing ones is that the existing ones will return back the DNS response, and the DNS response will be cached inside the DNS servers, the local DNS resolvers, with a time to live. And the attacker need to wait for this time to pass to attack again. However, if it is non-existent, then there's no caching and no TTL to wait. So in this case, even when the attacker failed, they can keep trying with another non-existent name until they win. They can try infinitely many, and there's no like time limit for them, like how many chance can you have within a 1 minute, such kind of thing. There's no limit for them to do so. So this is why they will use the non-existent domain instead of the existing ones. And now we'll move to question 3. So in this class, you learn about DNSSEC, which uses signature chains to ensure authentication for DNS results. Recall that in the case of negative results, the name server returns a signed pair of domains that are alphabetically before and after the requested name. For example, suppose the following name existed in google.com when viewed in alphabetical order, which is A, A1, and AA. So in this ordering, aaa.google.com would fall between A1 sauce and A art of work. So in response, the name server would return an informal state that the name that in alphabetical order comes after, and along with a signature that the NSEC are made using Google.com key. So here I want to explain a bit about DNSSEC. As I've introduced, DNSSEC is returning a chain of signature. And the reason to return a pair of already signed and existing domains for a query that is asking for a non-existent domain is because signing online is really costly, and we want the system to run without anything that has to wait online and be online forever. So we instead return some pre-signed signatures, which is like a pair that is right before and after the domain name that is non-existent in alphabetical order. So here, now we will continue to look at the questions. So the first question is asking about DNS attacks we previously saw cause victims to unknowingly visit an attacker-controlled domain. Since receiving a negative result back from name server causes a client to raise an error rather than visit a domain, why is signature still necessary? What attack becomes possible without one? So this prevents the DOS attack. Because if the signatures weren't provided, then the object security is lost. Then if I'm the adversary, I can pretend to be a name server and return negative results for every request that user sent me. And I will keep the user from visiting any of the websites they want to visit. So so a signature for the non-existent domains is still necessary because the negative results also need a proof and authentication of the senders. And the second question is, a startup sought less security decides to modify the DNSSEC to only return a signature of the requested domain on a negative result. They claim that this change will drastically reduce the packet size of negative result. A company, what attack is now possible? So they only return a signature of a requested domain on a negative result, which means on a positive domain, there will be no signature on it. So what is the problem right now? The problem is still a DOS attack, but in a different way. So I will mark this part as And the different reason we have here for DOS attack is that the hacker now can query random domains that have a high probability of non-existing, and the name server will constantly need to compute signatures to sign this non-existent domains because they are totally different each time, and they have to compute like online. And this will exhaust all the resources of the name servers, and the users might not be able to visit to get any authenticate, like get any valid response from the DNS servers because they're used up by the adversaries. So this is the same reason why the DNSSEC need to sign paired domains instead of um, signing online for any non-existent domains. And third part is using the originally described DNSSEC protocol, describe how an attacker can enumerate all domain names. By enumerate all domain names, we are indicating that the attacker can find a way to list out all the domain names from the response of the DNS server. And how can we do this is we just keep querying for non-existent domains. In this way, we can get pairs of existed domains. And if we control this process delicately, we request for domains that are alphabetically sorted and one by one. Like we know that they are. We first like try to get this one, the aaa.google, and we'll next we will see this domain, and next we'll send something like aardvark1.google.com, which is unlikely to exist, and which should be right after this aardvark domain, and the next domain name will be revealed to us. So this is how the attackers can enumerate all domain names. And this fourth part is a startup wants to use a hash function to hinder this enumeration process, and start by taking the hash of each existing domain. How can they use hashes to provide authenticated negative results? So this is basically following the same syncing process of the regular DNSSEC design. So say we want to ask for google.com, and in this DNS server, or this google.com is computed with a hash function first, and we will and it will check for, maybe let's see, it's like 6BAD whatever, and so the DNS resolver will check for this number in its list, which is alphabetically ordered with the hash values of domain name. And if there is negative results, which means there's non-existent results, it will just return the preceding and the latter hash value of the non-existent domain. So in this way, because the hash function is one way, So there's no way for the attackers to get back the original domain name for this hash value, and thus the attackers can't apply this enumeration attack. Oh, I actually have spoiled the answer for the first part, but it's okay. So which property does hash function need to have? And this is exactly that hash function has its one-way property. And so last part of the discussion worksheet is about describe an adversary with access to dictionary might still be able to perform an enumeration attack, while conditions must hold true for domain names. So the reason that an adversary can conduct a dictionary attack, an enumeration attack with a dictionary, is that he can pre-compute the hash values for all the domain names. He can list it out, and he can check with um, the hash values returned, and he will know what is the value, what is the name of the value of the domain name, because he already calculate out the hash values. Um, So such one-wayness of the hash function won't stop him from finding the domain name corresponding to the hash values, and thus he can still perform enumeration attacks. So this is the end of today's section, and hope you are having a great week.